See this one. The best and worst of 2024.
Well, I guess it's that time of year again, as the
I still have not watched Joker 2 fully. I just watched some clips here and there. I watched like the beginning of it, but I clicked off. It was just one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
last few days of 2024 tick
I watched
down
like the
into
beginning
the
of it, and I was like, nah,
booze-fueled
I'm good.
journey into oblivion that is New Year's Eve. It feels like the right time to look back on the highs and lows of the year that was. I mean, admittedly, it was mostly lows this year, with a movie industry still reeling from the effects of last year's strikes and a pretty dismal summer movie season that coined the term flopbuster. But what the hell, I'm going to do my best to sprinkle in a few hints of positivity. And with that in mind, let's start with my top 5 personal favourites of 2024. And top of that list has got to be Shogun, a historical drama following the
Shogun?
adventures
Yeah, I heard
of
it
an
was good. I
English
haven't had a chance to
sailor
watch it
trapped
yet.
in feudal Japan that came out so early in the year and eventually got buried under so much other crap that it's easy to forget that it even happened in 2024. But it
That's
did
crazy.
happen, and it was a fantastic show that treated the source material with the respect it deserved, unlike some shows I could name. Showcased superb performances by a talented cast, excellent production values, and generally great writing all rounds. It's a pleasure to know that thoughtful, mature shows like that are still getting made, that not everything has to revolve around capes, spandex, and over-the-top CGI, and that people are
I heard
hungry
it was
for
really
more
good.
of
I
it.
haven't had a chance to watch
Well
it though,
done,
but I heard it was really
Shogun.
good.
Next up is another easy choice for me, The Penguin. I mean, looking back on it now, it was the most unlikely of success stories. A spin-off
True.
TV show about a minor character from a not especially popular Batman movie, starring Colin Farrell buried
I
under
disagree.
layers of
The Batman is
prosthetics.
very
It seemed
popular,
like just another
my opinion.
obscure superhero show destined to be forgotten. Instead, it turned out to be a remarkably solid, violent, and mature crime drama with compelling, complex characters, excellent acting all round, and almost no connection to the superhero genre at all, with a script that gently
It's mostly like
encourages you
mafia
to
stuff, you
empathise
know?
with the Penguin before pulling
Crime.
the rug out from under you with a gut punch ending that'll stay with you long after the credits roll. In third place is a movie that most of you have probably never heard of, but you definitely should watch. One
One
Life.
Life?
A quiet, unpretentious little British film that came out at the start of the year, starring Anthony Hopkins as an old man who once helped Jewish children escape the Nazi occupation of Czechoslovakia, but only received recognition for his work much later in life. It's not often that a film can bring a tear to the eye of a cynical arsehole like me, but One Life did it with ease. It's an important reminder that there's still good people in the world, and even when humanity is at its worst, it's a chance for men to be at their best. Fourth place goes to Dune Part 2, a sci-fi epic by Denis Villeneuve that finally
Dune?
proved it
I've
is
never been a fan of
possible
it,
to make a
but I
big
heard
screen
it was
adaptation
alright.
of Frank Herbert's
Like,
classic
I think it's
novel.
like the replacement for
Visually
Star Wars kind of
spectacular
thing.
but emotionally distant, and boasting the kind of cast that's rarely assembled these days, it was a landmark achievement for science fiction movies, proving that more
Yeah.
intelligent and mature titles can still be viable mainstream prospects. And this last one isn't really a movie or a TV show, but a short film called Rogue Elements. Nah, I'm just fucking
What?
with you. It's actually Star Trek Unification, a 7-minute short with absolutely no dialogue that uses a combination of live action and digital face masks to recreate Kirk and Spock as they looked 30 years ago.
Oh,
Poignant,
wow.
moving, and beautifully shot. It gives Star Trek fans the last goodbye for their two favourite characters that they never got, shows just how much can be conveyed by a single look, and proved the boundless potential for this kind of
A short
technology as long as it's used
with
correctly.
no dialogue? That's
in a
crazy.
time when the very essence of Star Trek has been strip-mined and buried under tedious, low-effort garbage and the message. It was nice to be reminded of what
The
once made it so
message.
special, and I'm not too proud to admit that I may have shed a tear or two while watching it. For me, that's probably the best this year had to offer, so now let's take a look at the worst.
Alright, let's
And
do it.
wow,
That's what I
narrowing
wanna
this
watch.
one down to
The
just
worst.
5 choices was a challenge all by itself, but there were a couple that I think we can all agree deserve to be there. First up has got to be Madam Web,
Oh
a
my
wannabe
God.
superhero movie in Sony's aborted Spider-Verse that was so hilariously terrible, even the actors ended up taking the piss out of it. A decision
they
that
all
was
made fun
almost
of it.
certainly the best thing they could have possibly...
The weirdest thing ever, it's like they want to make a whole Spider-Verse without Spider-Man. They didn't even showcase Spider-Man in any way, shape, or form. Only in this film, I believe, at the end when Peter Parker was like a kid or a baby or whatever, right? But for some reason, in Venom, no Spider-Man. Madam Web, No Spider-Man. Pretty much. Kraven the Hunter, no Spider-Man. Morpheus, no Spider-Man. It was so fucking ridiculous. Like, bro, you need Spider-Man in the Spider-Verse. If you're trying to build a whole like verse of it, add Spider-Man in some way. He doesn't be the main character, obviously, but you could add Spider-Man in some way. You know?
Done for their careers,
That was
featuring
like
some
the
of the
weirdest
worst
decision
dialogue,
ever.
worst acting, worst directing, and worst writing of any superhero movie ever. It was so bad that even the shill media couldn't possibly defend it. And ironically, the movie's spectacular failure and her ability to laugh at it somehow launched Sydney Sweeney into overnight mainstream success.
Yep.
I mean, I can think of a couple of other reasons
Okay,
too, but
okay,
still,
dude.
the film was so
Okay,
roundly
dude.
mocked by everyone that it almost became something for us to bond over. Like, you almost couldn't even be angry at it because it was never going to be anything better. But do you know what we did get angry over? Fucking Joker 2, a movie that I could best describe as anti-entertainment. A film made by people who actively
calling?
hate the
Oh,
original
it's
movie and its
scam?
protagonist, and by extension anyone who enjoyed either of those things. A tedious and plodding deconstruction of the first Joker, unbearably pretentious and weighed down by cringy and unnecessary musical
I
sequences.
hated it. I
was a
hated
film
it,
that
bro.
seemed to have been
They
conceived
ruined
and
it. They
executed
ruined
out
it
of
on
pure
purpose too, I believe.
spite. Oh, so you thought Arthur Fleck might have been a slightly sympathetic anti-hero who had a reason for doing the things he did, eh? Well, you clearly didn't enjoy the film the way we deem acceptable, and you didn't take the correct messaging from it, so we're gonna punish you. Well,
Pretty
in
much.
the end, it turned out it was the studio who got punished, and Joker 2 ended up being one of the biggest critical and commercial disasters of the year. So you know what? Fuck you, Warner Brothers. Number 3,
Or mostly
Borderlands.
fuck you to the
Let
director,
me pose
pretty
you a
much.
question, dear viewer.
Probably
Do
heard
you
this
want to
credit
see a
too now. People don't
cartoonish,
wanna watch it,
hyper-surreal first-person shooter
Nice.
turned into a confused mess of a movie with lame action sequences
Oh, that
and a
was so
nonsensical
bad,
story,
bro.
starring a geriatric cast and a lead actress who's a quarter of a century too old for the character she's playing? Nah, me neither.
Yeah,
which
it was
probably
so
explains why
bad.
Borderlands made just $33 million against a $120 million budget, losing the studio tens of millions of dollars and
Hopefully
killing any
Borderlands 4, the
prospect
game
of
could
future
rebuild
movies.
the franchise.
Even though it was barely 100 minutes long, it was an absolute slog to get through,
This
and I
was
spent
so
every single
bad.
minute of it asking myself, why the fuck does this movie even exist? And to be honest, I still don't have an answer for you. Number 4, The Crow. Possibly the most
Oh,
unanticipated and
no.
unwanted movie of the year. A joyless reboot of the Crow franchise that pretty much nailed it with the Brandon Lee movie back in the mid-90s and has been going downhill ever since.
Here's the
It was a
thing.
film so grimly
Here's the thing. The Crow, anybody could be the Crow, right? Male, female, doesn't matter. That's the premise of the Crow is to get your revenge, right? That's literally the premise. They overthought this way too hard instead of keeping it simple like they did with the original, right? And also they went more with the source material. So if this was a reboot and start of the franchise and like the cast, because the craziest thing about the Crow could last a very long time in media, in TVs, in movies, because the premise is pretty simple. You come back to life to take revenge. That's literally like I'm trying to keep it simple, right? I don't know how the fuck they messed this movie up that bad when the premise is so simple.
tediously, unrelentingly shit that I felt like I lost all concept of time and space while I was watching it. Like when it was finally
Shit,
over
I
and
did
I
too,
emerged
man.
from the movie theater into the sunlight, blinking and confused like a prisoner released from a 2-year stretch in solitary, I had to keep reminding myself that it was actually a real movie and not some weird fever dream. It was slow, bleak, depressing, boring, and generally awful from start to finish, and a top contender for one of my least enjoyable movie experiences ever. But of course, no trip to the 2024 Mount Everest of bullshit would be complete unless we reached the peak, the pinnacle of crap, the ultimate in terrible entertainments. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you The Acolytes.
Oh no.
The power of two.
Oh
I mean, what can I really say about this shit show that hasn't already been said by pretty much all of YouTube? It was a
This was the most serious Star Wars show of all time, and the premise of it was really, really, really bad. Now, did the villain look cool? Yes, I'll give him like for me personally, I think it looked cool, but the whole sister thing, the whole like they're made by the Force was like they kind it was just a very weird premise, pretty much the way they went about it. The way their tribe died by the little fire, like what the okay. Some of the fight scenes were cool here and there, but the whole season was just a poor, like bored. Like it was boring, dude. Like you could just fall asleep, dude. Like holy shit. And then you wake up and it's still in the same scene. Um and also I'm not gonna lie, I think like for like especially people who are online, like on Twitter and stuff like that, I think the actress hurt the season when she made the song about about how stupid people are. Bro, when actors, shut the fuck up online. Stop giving your personal opinion online. I'm sorry. Just nobody cares, right? Or they care enough where they'll cancel your show. They won't watch your show. They will advocate to like not watch the show because you got to keep your personal feelings out of it, kind of thing. You got to get people to like. So instead of talking ish about people, just like try to give like a good marketing strategy where like, hey guys, this show could be really great because of this. No political, no social issues, nothing like that. Just showcase, okay, the characters are really cool because the fight scene's gonna be really amazing. A cool cameo is gonna come up very soon from the old games, etc. Stuff like that. That would get people excited instead of like trying to talk down on them in like in a personal sense.
Project conceived by people with no interest or understanding of Star Wars, no talent for writing or filmmaking, and whose only priorities could neatly be summed up in 3 small words: diversity, equity, and inclusion. It was a $250 million vanity project made by a woman who views entertainment as her own personal therapy session, and greenlit
So
by a
stupid.
studio
So
utterly
stupid.
determined to bulldoze its own franchises into the grounds. And the backlash against it was so thermonuclear that Disney actually had to promise never to make anything more of it.
Yep, they
Really,
canceled
the
the
only
season.
good thing I can say about The Acolyte is that it probably launched the careers of more online movie critics than The Last Jedi, and that in itself is a pretty impressive
Oh, yeah, that's true.
accomplishment. Now that's the worst of the year, but there's one more category I want to look at here, and that's my
Okay.
biggest disappointments of 2024.
Disappointment? Oh, like, you thought it
Not
was gonna be
necessarily
good?
the worst films or TV shows ever made, but things that I had high hopes for that never quite lived up to expectations. And top of the list for me has got to be Gladiator 2. Damn man, talk about a pointless sequel. It's a movie so preoccupied with venerating the original that it ends up just retelling the same story again, only worse. The
Wait,
acting,
what?
the
How?
characters, the writing, and the cinematography are all a massive
So I'm
downgrade
making this
from the
longer
original.
so it could
It's
fit the other
bloated
one,
and
guys. I gotta be
self-important. The
consistent with the
finale
pace.
makes no fucking sense, and if nothing else,
Look
it's
at the
proof
pace
that
here,
Ridley
look at the
Scott's
pace here.
best days as a director are well behind him. It's a film that never should have been made by a
Right.
director
Like,
who shouldn't
oh,
be
they
making
look really
films, and it's
different,
one
so
that
it's
I
like,
think
okay, I
everyone
gotta, like,
involved
I
is going to
gotta
end up
adjust the
regretting.
pace.
Now, House
Even though
of the
it's more of an
Dragon was
angle.
one of the standout shows of 2022 for me, with an absolutely stellar cast and the kind of patient, smart, intricate plot that Game of Thrones used to be so good at. So I was pretty excited to tune in for season 2 this year, and
Oh, was season 2
unfortunately,
bad?
the more I saw of it, the less excited I became. Paddy Considine's King Viserys was the emotional glue that held season 1 together, and without him, the show feels kind of directionless. Just a bunch of morally grey and increasingly unlikable people doing shitty things to each other with no particular reason to root for anyone. Yeah, it's still well made, but the best way I can describe it is like looking at a really impressive but slightly soulless building. You can admire the technical skill that was involved in making
Dude,
it,
I'm
but it
trying to
doesn't
make
really
it more
make you
like
feel
this.
much of anything. By all accounts, the season had a troubled production history that was
'Cause I
reflected
don't
in
have,
the
like, a
rushed finale
specific
and an
style
ending
with the
that just
characters
kind of
yet,
stops on the
especially with
verge
my
of a
human
major
yet.
event. And I don't know, man. After this, I can't really imagine getting fired up for watching season 3. Number 3, Alien Romulus. Talk about failing to stick the landing, man.
I thought
The
it was
trailer got
okay.
us all
I didn't think it was
pumped
the
up for
worst
what
thing
looked like a
ever.
return to form for
Romulus,
the Alien
honestly,
franchise, and the
it was
competent
alright,
direction,
me
grounded
personally.
production design, and decent setup laid the foundations for what should have been a solid action horror movie. Instead, it soon devolved into cheap member berries and nostalgia baiting, recycling ideas and dialogue from far better movies,
It
and an
wasn't, like,
ending
the
that
worst,
completely
but-
fell apart. It could and should have been an easy win, but instead it turned into a cheap and embarrassing failure. Number 4, Argylle. If ever a movie failed to make use of an impressive cast and a fun premise, it was Argylle. The trailers built it up as a reality-bending action comedy with Henry Cavill playing a
Yeah, I used
suave
it- I used
fictional
this
super
differently, so
spy
it's
who
fine.
might just be more real than he seems. Instead, it turned out to be a tedious and unfunny slog about a fat middle-aged woman who somehow turns out to be the most deadly secret agent in the world. Bryce Dallas Howard looks awkward and uncomfortable, especially when she has to do anything even resembling action. Henry Cavill's barely even in the movie, and even Sam Rockwell can't rescue what turned out to be a complete dud of a film. Now, this last one's probably going to be controversial, but here goes. Season 2 of Arcane really wasn't very good, and it was a big downgrade from Season 1. Now, before you get your pitchforks out, don't get me wrong, the animation is still absolutely gorgeous, some of the characters get individually great moments, and the voice acting is still top notch, but the writing and creative direction are badly lacking compared to the previous season. Characters like Vi, who were central to the narrative in Season 1, are pushed into the background for no good reason. Jinx now acts like a completely different person. The plot tries to introduce so much new technology and world-changing concepts that I ended up feeling completely lost by it, and the big final confrontation is so rushed and poorly executed that I genuinely started to lose track of what everyone was trying to do and why.
They didn't continue the show.
It feels like they tried to cram 3 seasons worth of character development and plot events into a single season, and the result was a rushed, overstuffed mess that lost so much of what made Season 1 so great. It certainly wasn't the worst thing I've seen this year, but man, considering how much I enjoyed Season 1, it just felt like such a disappointment. Anyway, there you have it, dear viewer. My little attempt to sum up the best and worst of what's been a pretty rough year in entertainment. I don't know what 2025 is going to bring us, but one thing I can promise you is that I'll be there trying to make sense of it. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
Oh my god.
Officers respond to a gas station where...
Well, I guess it's that time of year again.
Everything that I watched, like even Venom 3 was the disappointment for me personally because of like how they did like a bait and switch on the marketing with Noel, like the villain. Like he wasn't actually the villain, it was just a little minion pretty much. That was bad. Look at you is the perfect example of why some films should not have a sequel 100%. But they're trying to make the money. They didn't. They lost money. They lost money of the profits from the first Joker movie. The best part of the accolade was the Mia Mokova tweeted. I think I'm officially say I've been in better written Star Wars movies. Oh, Malkova. Oh, okay, yeah. Does she still stream? This is basically the Emmett for me. Oh my god, bro. Was Star Wars ever good? I just saw like a title, and such a very good title. I think the first trilogy was pretty good. I think it aged poorly because like the fight scenes and effects and stuff like that. But overall, I think it's good. And then I think the prequels aged better, except for like the I think the prequels has some good moments, right? It has some good villains, right? Like the first one's memorable because it had that one red guy villain. I forgot the name. Oh my god, I can't believe it. Anyways, it had that good moment, right? The second one, they had not really had any good moment at all, even though it was like the start of the Clone Wars and stuff like that. But it wasn't really like, it wasn't had any that I remember had like no good moments. But the third one was obviously the best of the three because that was the introduction of like him going to the dark side, the origin of it, all the crazy shit he did, and all the way to the ending. So that's just me. Um, anyways.